My friend Joe Little, Public Relations Manager for the NYC Rescue Mission, the oldest organization of its kind in our country. It first opened its doors in 1872 and has served New Yorkers struggling with homelessness, mental illness, and substance abuse for nearly 140 years. And that's where come Monday next. Now, folks with family, we call our audience. We're taping this on Wednesday. You're hearing it on Saturday, November 19th. But on next Monday, what's that, the 21st?
Yes, sir.
I will be with Joe Little, and Granddaddy's Little Cupcake's going to be with me.
We can't wait.
I'm going to hang out with her granddaddy, and we're coming down to help serve food to people who come from around the city, really, don't you?
The New York City shelter system, we send out charter buses and roll out the red carpet. We promise that Mayor Dinkins will be there, and they just light up when they see you, and I suppose that they'll light up when they see Kalila. So it's a real blessing for about 1,000 New York City shelter residents, and also the Chinatown community as well.
Is Kathy Lee coming this year?
Kathy Lee Gifford, one of your favorites, I know. Hoda Kotb will be there.
Oh.
The gang's all there.
They're terrific. And, you know, it's a damn shame. People like me, we do so little. No pun intended, Joe. We do so little, and we take deep bows like we're really doing something. And these folks work at this year-round, day after day after day. And Jennifer, I'm told that he gets to see your folks at City Harvest daily.
City Harvest picks up food from all over New York City and brings it to places like New York Rescue Mission, where they are the front lines of hunger and using it to feed people that need help and need extra food. So yeah, we'll be down there on Monday as well, but we work with New York Rescue Mission and agencies all over New York City to help feed the hungry every day with the surplus food from the food industry that would otherwise go to waste. That's perfectly edible, delicious food from restaurants, grocery stores around New York City, the green markets, and deliver it on our trucks for free to agencies, and then those agencies like New York Rescue feed people that need it.
And do you have any relationship at all with Gary Bagley and the New York Cares?
Well, an organization like New York Cares that gets volunteers connected to programs all over New York City, it's a terrific organization. We have worked together in the past.
Yeah, we've worked together on large-scale events. Our volunteers go to everything from soup kitchens to public schools and homeless shelters. As a matter of fact, we're going to be spending Christmas morning at the New York City Rescue Mission. Our annual coat drive, we will hopefully collect 100,000 coats for New Yorkers in need this year. And that includes, of course, not only those who are homeless, but for the working poor. We don't want anybody to have to make the choice between food on the table and a warm coat for their kids this year. So we'll be distributing coats at New York City Rescue Mission.
I'm pleased you mentioned the working poor, because as I'm sure you three know, we have more homeless today in our city than we've ever had.
Yes.
Since they started keeping records. And some of them are people with jobs who are homeless.
Yes.
And sad to say, some of them are veterans.
Indeed.
And it's a sad circumstance, but fortunately, government cannot do it all. And were it not for organizations such as those that you three represent, we'd be in even more trouble.
Yeah. One of our unfortunate statistics from last year was that we were 50% short on the number of children's coats that we needed to collect based on a request. So
the little people.
The little guys. And so this year we were 10,000 coats short for children last year. And we know that some of that's related to the shelter system and some of it isn't. A lot of social services agencies are working with parents who can't necessarily afford a coat or don't have a hand-me-down. So we're really seeing that, especially and in the work with the veterans too.
Let's see if we can get you some coats this Saturday.
That would be great.
This will be heard on Saturday morning. We're folks willing and able to give some coats, what do they do?
We like everything we do, we try to make that as easy as possible. We have a partnership with the New York City Police Department, so a New Yorker can go into any police precinct in the 5 boroughs and donate a coat 24 hours a day between now and December 31st. If you happen to be coming from outside New York or you're coming to Manhattan for a day of shopping, Bryant Park, City Pond at Bryant Park is collecting whenever the rink is open, which is tremendous. And then we also, if you go to our website, newyorkcares.org, we have over 200 collection sites this year. We doubled them knowing that the need is even greater this year than it has been in the past.
Do these coats have to be new or newly cleaned? Or
we ask for gently used, preferably cleaned, and we are accepting new coats. Many folks, again, at the holiday times like to do a gift-giving program for kids, and we're asking that if you don't have an idea of what to do, buying a child's coat and donating it to our coat drive, it will get used.
You don't reject money, I assume.
We absolutely have never been known to do that. One of the things we also do ask is, of course, donations of time and money at the end of the year help us make all of this happen.
I think that's terrific. I often say to people like you three, when I'm privileged to have you at these microphones, that folks like you who do good things have to feel good in the morning. Because it really is wonderful that there's some who care about others. Dr. King said that we will one day be judged by how we treat the least among us. And unfortunately, not everybody remembers that. Now, on the food, you collect, I'm sure, canned foods.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you go to bring your coat in, the police and fire stations also partner with City Harvest. Bring a can with you, drop it off at your police and fire. You can run canned food drives at your place of worship, your school. We have about 1,000 corporations and schools that donate canned food, packaged food, boxed cereal, plastic jugs of peanut butter, canned beans, canned tuna fish. Any of that type of product is so needed by folks right now. And we raise about 1 million extra pounds through our food drives over the holiday season. So any way you can help with that is great. And there's drop sites at the police and fire again, and then usually you can find them at your public schools or your libraries or your place of worship.
Well, my notes say that you have created something called Harvest Works.
Right. So the idea behind Harvest Works was farmers have invested a lot of money in their crops, and if they don't sell, it's expensive for a farmer to want to donate it. They've already invested a lot in it. So Harvest Works was a way to say to the farmer, don't plow under your fields. If there's a way we could feed the hungry with it and get it down to New York City, you know, it's a paradox that an hour outside of farmland, people in New York City are struggling with hunger and, in fact, not having enough produce on their plate as well. Healthy farm fresh food is hard to get for folks living in the South Bronx or in deep Brooklyn. So we're the link in between the farmers and their extra product and getting it to these neighborhoods.
You mean you go pick it up?
So a lot of times the farmers will bring it into the city. They sell. There's farmers that are in the South Bronx selling at the wholesale Grow NYC farmers market up there. But if on occasion, sure, we'll go. If they have extra product, City Harvest will truck up there and bring the product back down to New York City.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And Joe, I know that you all are so proud of City Mission and the many, many years that you have been feeding folks there. You're at Lafayette and
White.
And White.
Two blocks south of Canal Street in Lower Manhattan.
Well, I probably have told you this before when I was privileged to be in your company, but in 1956,
Esquire,
you were not yet born, and I started practicing law at 401 Broadway, which is the corner of Broadway and Walker. It's one block north of White and a block west.
I think our friends at the Tribeca Trib actually are one of the tenants in that building right now.
boy, that was a long time ago.
And we want you to be there on Monday because that's your old haunting grounds, and we have the warm bodies. The folks at New York Cares, they get us the coats. Folks at City Harvest, they get us the food, and we see the people. We have 100 beds. So every night since I've been there, 8 years now, the beds have been full. And in fact, we're having a capital campaign in case any of your listeners have $1 million burning a hole in their pocket,
or less.
Or less. We have a capital campaign where we're right in the midst of it. We want to raise 3 floors on our building. Now, that won't be as tall as your building, but that will double our bed, the number of people that we can rest each evening. And we'll have a small women's emergency shelter. So that will enable us to bless some of the women folk in our community that we're seeing, but we just don't have a space for them right now.
Now, I just have to ask you this. Unless you've been living under a rock or in Mars or something, you're mindful of Zuccotti Park, what's going on down there. And today, Wednesday, early this morning, police moved in and sanitation folks, and they swept everything out. And I hear from news reports that they're going to be permitted to return, but without tents and bunks and such. Now, I am confident that as the weather breaks, it gets cold. Happens that it's warm today in the last few days. It's going to be pretty cold. And I don't want to really put you on the spot, Gary, but are you apt to supply warm wear to folks down there?
Well, we've thought about that. One of the main way we distribute our coats is social services agencies have applied, and we already have applications for well over 80,000 coats. We generally handle that first come, first serve. But one thing that we do for individuals who might need a coat is there are vouchers we give, and there's an agency in each borough that agrees to distribute coats to individuals. So if anyone decided to spend the colder months in Zuccotti Park and came and got a voucher, like any New Yorker who is in need and cold, we would give them one, and there'd be a place where they could get a coat.
Well, that sounds good. I don't know where this is going. I read the press this morning, and the mayor and the police commissioner determined that. In fact, the mayor said it was his judgment alone that he made the decision, and but the question is how many will return later, and how long will they stay? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One of their messages is about the 99%, right? That the gap between the 1% and the 99% is growing.
Haves and have-not.
Right. And so one thing that we've seen this year was that the poverty numbers came out, and New York City numbers are up. 20% of the population of New York City lives in poverty.
Mm.
So if you're a family of 3, what that means is that you make $24,000 or less a year.
Which is not much anywhere, and in New York City it is nothing.
So 1 out of 5 people lives at the poverty line or below. So you think about 1, 2, 3, count 5 people. Probably not as much right in the middle of Manhattan, but if 1 out of 5 is a lot, and that's up. And nationally it's 46 million, which is also up. So last year it was 18%, now we're at 20%. So the numbers are growing. The economy is certainly not helping and not improving, and definitely for this group, it's a lagging improvement. Even if the economy did surge, which it started to and is kind of not again, this group is lagging. And I was curious if New York Rescue Mission is seeing a different clientele, people that, like you said, do have jobs and they're still living at this paycheck to paycheck or 2 or 3 jobs to make it work.
Our afternoon food pantry at the New York City Rescue Mission has, I don't know if I would say exploded, has certainly spiked. It used to be 2 or 3 or 4 people that would come in the afternoon for a bag of groceries, and now the lobby is full, and so So City Harvest is a big help in that regard. I know that the other night, Halloween night, the New York City shelter population was above 40,000 for the first time ever. I know that New York City Coalition for the Homeless documented that, and we're seeing that at our front door, and even with the Chinatown community, we're seeing folks that need groceries, need to supplement what they're doing to make ends meet.
I'm on the board of Coalition for the Homeless, and I know what you're talking about. It is, I mean, I do very little, but there's some wonderful, wonderful people who give of themselves, and they do some very, very good work. I mean, aside from the obvious, they lobby and promote policy issues that matter a great deal, that one way or another affect each of the things that you three do.
Absolutely.
I do want to say, Mayor, that the Occupy Wall Street folks called us the other day. The first time that we had heard from them, they gave us a call when they were starting to wrestle with the homeless population within their ranks. And that's a logistical issue. You know, what do you do? How gracious are you? And they said, what services do you provide? And we said, well, anyone that comes to our door, we will feed and clothe and so forth. We don't have as much capacity to go to even a few blocks or several blocks to reach out in every different direction. But but it was very poignant that the folks from Occupy Wall Street were wanting to bless the even poorer people amongst them and looking for services. So maybe we have seen some of their ranks come to our door.
Well, they're moving north anyway.
We certainly have seen them march by our door in the last couple of months, many times.
Well, I think it's good that there exist people like you three in your organizations to do wonderful, wonderful things. Some of us who are blessed to eat regularly and have a roof over our heads and whatnot, we don't sufficiently well appreciate our good fortune. And I suppose at times like Thanksgiving, particularly, the people of varying faiths will bless the food, as they say. It is rare not to hear someone say, and there are those among us who don't have the ability to eat tonight.
Absolutely.
And they would include them. My father, everybody called him Pop, and he used to love to say grace on occasions like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter, and he would get profound, and we had a little act. Every year he would go say these things, and I'd say, Pop, I didn't understand a word you said. And he would say, I wasn't talking to you. My father lived to be 86, or just short of 86, which means that I got about an hour and a half to go. I will be 85 come July.
Wow.
Congratulations.
And our little boy is 57.
Oh, dear.
Daddy little fella.
Yeah.
He loves his daddy, you know. He likes his mommy a little bit, too. And he has a sister, Donna, and when I say to him, his name is David, I said, Davy, you know, your mommy made good children. He says, well, Dad, you're half right. He never says which half, though. Bless his heart. I'm telling you. Children are the best, though, aren't they? I just love them.
It's a blessing until you've had them, and when you have them, you realize you might not have understood before, and then you realize, and your mind just opens up.
Well, at the rescue mission, there are always little children. You know, their families, and they come, and and they are so cute.
And if I had $1 for every kid that you have virtually spoon-fed. I remember a year or so ago, there was this kid, and you were he was eating you up, and you were eating him up, and he was having the time of his life, and you were his new grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandpa Mayor Dinkins, and boy, the cameras eat that up as well. So,
but I just love them. They're the best. Joe Little, a longtime friend, public relations manager for NYC Rescue Mission. I should give a shout out to my friend Robin Verges. Robin is a vice president with Howard Rubenstein, who is a very long time friend. Howard and I go back to 1973. And Carol Banks in my office, when we're seeing what guests we might entice to come on the program, frequently will call Robin. And because Howard Rubenstein, pro bono, in most instances, does work for a lot of wonderful organizations, and he reached out to you three.
Yes.
And I am just very pleased and delighted. Folks who care about other people, I like particularly, especially if they happen to be children. Now, the old folks like me, they're all right too, but for children, I say to people, sometimes when we're complaining about the misbehavior of some, and particularly a homeless circumstance, and the rules and regulations impact negatively on the children, I will sometimes say, well, okay, mommy or daddy did this or failed to do that, but what did the children do to anybody?
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, there's no response. They say, well, hell, they didn't do anything to anybody. And but I know that there, but for the grace of God, go any one of us.
Yeah.
My mother and father separated when I was 6 or 7, living in Trenton, New Jersey. And because I'm very old, these were the Depression years. And my mother came here to New York, and she and my grandmother were domestics, cooking and cleaning for folks for, I guess, $1 a day, which at that time was a whole lot more than it is today. And I lived in Harlem. People used to ask me, well, where did you live? And I said, we moved a lot. We moved when the rent was due. Seemed like a good time to move. Eventually, I went back to Trenton and lived with my father, and I graduated high school and went off to the service from Trenton. But when my father remarried, I thought that I would die, because my mother and father were always very civil to one another, and on those occasions when we were all together, things looked rosy to me, a child. Mm-hmm. And so when my father told me he was going to get married, I cried a week. But it developed that my stepmother was like another mother, wonderful woman, school teacher. And it was she who insisted when I got out of the Marine Corps that I go to college. I had the GI Bill. And I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to party. I had $200 or $300, which is more money than I'd ever seen at one time. And but she was insistent. And I got discharged in August of 1946 and started Howard University in September. And I said, but can't get in. She said, don't worry, you get in. And she had a classmate, Dr. Carroll Miller, and he was in charge of Veterans Affairs. And I had good grades in high school, so it was not a problem. But I have to confess that for a year and a half, my motto was, don't let your education interfere with your recreation. But then I
buckled down.
Serious.
Right, I got serious.
I guess
you're right. And I started to study, but even that was a function of a teacher I had who was the head of the mathematics department, Dr. David Blackwell, and PhD from the University of Illinois at 22. Brilliant little guy. And he wouldn't embarrass you. He'd call on you, and if you didn't have the right answer, he would say something like, well, perhaps, Mr. Dinkins, tomorrow you'll be prepared. And that would make you go hustle.
Oh.
And the result was I eventually graduated with honors in math and won a fellowship to Rutgers. And,
Wonderful.
but
And here
God
you
is
are.
good.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, because I wasn't any smarter than anybody else, but I had the good fortune of encountering people who cared about me, and they made me learn.
Yeah.
And,
From the very
Wonderful.
beginning.
Yeah.
right, way back.
Well, at New York Cares, we're running volunteer programs all year round, and I think one thing that volunteers connect to, and we see for the kids is, and your own story points it out, is that a caring adult who pushes someone in the direction of opportunity, who works with them to think about a structure that they may not have picked on their own, and then to follow through with them and say, how is that going? That caring adult is something that unfortunately not every child has in their life, and not every parent is in the position to offer that kind of attention. When we do a lot of our work in the homeless system, and parents are in a very a time of upheaval for themselves. So a volunteer who can come in and make sure that an elementary school child has somebody to read with them at night. We have one young lady who followed us on our programs through to an SAT preparation program that we worked with her on during her junior year, and is now sitting in her sophomore year at NYU. And she calls the volunteers who used to come to Fordham Bedford, the agency she was working with, she calls them her 5 other mothers. And I think the 5 of them, I think, would agree that that's how they look at it.
That's wonderful.
But that is one thing that whether a volunteer is serving a meal, whether it's a donation of a coat or some food, that chain of connecting to the child and back to the community reminds us all of that position, the fortunate position we're in, whether it's Thanksgiving or whether it's the middle of July.
Well, Gary, while we have you on your feet, tell folks about the coat drive and where they can drop coats off and such.
Sure thing. We are collecting coats from now through the end of the year. At New York Cares, we work very hard to make it as easy as possible. We have a wonderful partnership with the New York City Police Department. You can donate a coat at any police precinct in the 5 boroughs, 24 hours a day. You can also, if you happen to be a commuter, we collect during morning rush hour at Penn Station, Grand Central, and the New York City Port Authority bus terminal. And City Pond at Bryant Park is collecting for us. We're fortunate now to have over 200 collection sites, and they're all listed on our website. And you can even search, you can map it, so you can find what's closest to you.
Now, what's the beautiful language you used when I asked whether or not the coats had to be new or newly cleaned? Was it gently worn?
A well-practiced phrase. We ask gently used.
Okay.
and preferably freshly laundered.
All right, very good. I think I may have something that qualifies.
There you go.
Oh, boy. The food, I am especially impressed by the ingenuity that you all use. What's the founder's name?
It's Helen Pallett.
Yeah.
Yeah, she started with there were extra potatoes from the potato skin craze was going on in the early 80s, and they were throwing away the inside and just using the skin and putting cheese and bacon, and it'd be an appetizer. And she thought, I work at a soup kitchen, and I can't stand, what do you do with those potatoes? And the kitchen said, well, we tried everything, and now we just have too many, so we actually throw them away. She said, can I just take them in my car and then take them to the soup kitchen? And she thought, this must be happening everywhere if you're doing that. And how many restaurants are there in New York City? So she started getting volunteers and working with some students at NYU, and it's such a smart, simple solution. pick up food that's not being used. And now it's grown to big stores that really, logistics is half the battle in life. With coats or with anything, if someone can come get it and it's in a refrigerated, safe truck with a driver that's certified in food safety, so we've kind of put the things in place to make sure the food is safe. If logistics works out, half the battle. We'll have stores call us and say, if you can't come get this food right now, I'm going to have to dump it because I have customers waiting. It's blocking New York City. Everything's tight, and the stores are small. So we send a truck, we go pick it up, and next thing you know, we have a ton of apples, literally 2,000 pounds of apples that would have been thrown away. But logistics made it work.
I know that I met the fellow, I'll think of his name, who founded FedEx. And I said, gee, what a great idea. And I understood, this isn't to promote FedEx,
Right.
but I understood it as a means of getting things shipped around. And he said, no, what really happened in the very beginning was they just found out that there were lots of businesses who didn't have the capacity to store inventory. So if you could call up and say, I need 3 widgets and get them delivered the next day, then you were saving space on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, that's really how it started. Of course, they do a whole lot more today. And it's amazing how many ideas are born of the need now. This what after the fact appears very obvious. Why would you be throwing away so much of the blasted potato when somebody could eat it? And there are people doing without. Maybe some of them coming to visit my friend Joe Little at the New York City Rescue Mission. And you, in fact, do help supply food there.
Yep. And you're looking back at, you're talking about children, agencies like New York Rescue, and there's agencies all over New York City, they're saying that since 2008, the start of the recession, to now, they're seeing a 35% increase in visits by kids. And so when you see that number, you think, okay, who's on the front lines and who can help? So the coat drive is a huge help to anybody. It's the same need. It's food, it's shelter, it's your basic needs. The agencies exist like this. We can bring the food to them, and they're feeding people. They're helping. 35% increase in kids over 4 years is tough to hear. So it's good, really good places like.
We'll take your potatoes. We'll take your potato skins.
Sandwiches.
We'll take your apples. You got your apples. I was impressed that New York, regarding your founding, that New York University was a little bit involved in it. They have reinvented the wheel locally. They have a thing called 2 birds, 1 stone. And it's the exact same thing. They have the food there at New York University, and we're local to them. And they every day, and it's not just the food, but it's the smiling faces, it's the young blood, it's the interest that it just lifts us up. You know, it's one thing if you get food delivered, and that's the thing about City Harvest. They're professional. They're working hard. They're trying to get it done quickly because they need to get to the next spot. But they're smiling and smiling and smiling, and you can't buy that kind of blessing. And we see that at the New York City Rescue Mission every day.
Well, that's terrific. And Joe, explain, the City Rescue Mission has a limited number of spots. I think my recollection is like a couple of dozen or maybe 30.
We have 100 beds
Okay.
at the New York City Rescue Mission. About 75 of them are earmarked for overnight transient guests, and it's such a tight. There's too much demand for it, so we have a lottery every night of the year, even in the hottest night of the summer. Lottery system. And you remember your buddy Jeremy Nelson from a couple of years ago. We have a residential recovery program, and Gary was talking about the adults that help the kids. Someone like Jeremy, he had drugs, alcohol, whatever, fast living, had given up on his kid, and New York City Rescue Mission helped him go through a 12-step Bible-based, faith-based program to wrestle with his demons and to wrestle with his colleagues and peers. It's peer to peer. So much of what we do is guys helping guys at the mission. And he is back in Miami now. This is 2 years later after he graduated from the program. And he was blessed by your talking with him a couple of years ago. And he's back with his kid, and we hear from him, and that's just, it doesn't happen every time, but it's so often. We see men who have fallen away get back with their spouses and get back with their kids. And that's a big part, probably one of the sexiest parts about the New York City Rescue Mission is, it's just one thing to feed someone and to give them rest. You can do that 24/7. But if they are hopeless, if they have been discouraged, and it's deeply set, then they're not going to change. They're not going to want to change. And with God's help, they're changing at the New York City Rescue Mission.